The travel journalist, Jill Starley-Grainger, who's editor of jetsetjourneys.com. So not many jet set journeys taking place at the moment. I see on social media lots of complaints, Jill, about this. How big is the problem?
It's a massive problem. I'm getting so many complaints about this personally. And I mean, tens of thousands of complaints are happening to editors, to all sorts, the Civil Aviation Authority. Everybody is getting complaints about this. And it is a real problem that companies, or a lot of the really big companies are not doing what they should be doing, whereas lots of the smaller companies I have found in general are.
So what are the barriers being put up by airlines to delay refunds that passengers are entitled to, right?
Yes, you're absolutely entitled to a refund if your flight has been cancelled for any reason whatsoever, and it is covered by EU law. And any flight that is departing from Europe, including the UK, remember, we're still in Europe, we're still part of this law. Any flight departing from the UK falls under EU law, or if it's an EU airline anywhere else in the world, it's also covered by this law. If your flight is canceled, you should get your money back within 7 days. Now, so many airlines have come up with all sorts of excuses, but the biggest thing they're doing is they're just not taking the calls. You can't get through to them on email, you can't get through to them on chat, and you can't get through to them on the phone. That's the biggest thing. But lots of them are saying, oh, our T's and C's say this, that, or the other, or there's force majeure. It's all nonsense. You are due your money under the law.
So, OK, so what could you do then? Because I spoke to someone the other day who was having a problem, and they said, oh, they've removed the online cash refund option, and they're pushing them or encouraging them to take vouchers or to swap their flights. If you don't want to do that, what should you do? What options are open to you?
Yeah, so the airline can, of course, offer you other options. That's perfectly fine and legal. But as you've said, if you don't want to take them, so maybe you do want to move your flight for a year's time, OK, fine. I would not recommend taking any vouchers or credit notes because, as we know, they are not covered by any financial protection. So if that airline goes bust, you could lose all of your money. So what you should do, if you cannot get through to the airline and you've made a concerted effort and you can prove it, then you can either, first of all, go to your travel insurance if you have it. Your travel insurance will cover you in a lot of these cases. But the next thing is you can either go to your credit card or your debit card. And both of those will fall under different legislation. So if you paid on any credit card, it's covered by something called Section 75. And so in the case of this, where the flight has been canceled, in other words, you've paid for something that you were not able to take, and the airline is refusing to give you your money back, the credit card company can then give you your money back and they can make a claim. Debit cards are slightly different. It's called something, it's called the chargeback scheme. And under that, most debit card providers in this country follow it, but there are a few who do not. It's a voluntary scheme, but the vast majority of debit card providers do adhere to the chargeback scheme. So that's what you should do. Go to your credit or debit card provider.
That's very interesting about vouchers. I didn't realize that about vouchers, that they weren't covered. So are the refunds a problem with hotels and car hire companies and ferry service to the same extent, or is it different?
No, it's happening throughout the industry. So what I have found repeatedly is that it's really the big companies who are actually being the worst at this. And you would think they would be the ones who would have the most money available. They would have the most savings. They would be planning for this. They have big teams who can deal with this stuff. But in fact, repeatedly, they are the ones who keep treating customers the worst, telling them, making up all sorts of excuses that simply are not true and aren't correct under law in any way, shape, or form. Where so many small and medium companies, whether it's hoteliers, B&B owners, small travel agencies, etc., they have all been doing whatever they can to try to get customers their money back or to give them a booking at a future date if the customer is happy to accept that. So there really is no excuse for it. And I know it's a big thing right now. We know that all of these companies are suffering. It's been horrible for the travel industry. But if anybody should have money in the bank to deal with a major problem like this, it should be these really major companies. And yet they are the ones treating customers the worst right now. And I just don't think it's acceptable.
Yeah, but I suppose the bottom line is that these airlines depend and survive on the cash flow. They want to keep the cash going. Look at Flybe. Look at Richard Branson says Virgin Atlantic's in trouble. I mean, these airlines are in trouble, aren't they?
One of the reasons so many airlines are in trouble, as we now know, is because over the last few years, I think about the last decade, a lot of them have been doing something called buyback schemes. And it's a really complicated shares and trading situation, but essentially they have been eating into their own company profits, selling the shares, buying them back very cheaply in order to have massive payouts for their shareholders. Now, that's money they should have been investing back into their own airlines. And had they done that, there would be a much better margin of safety there. So there are some airlines that have done that, and those airlines are the ones who are not going to governments begging for money right now. There are some huge airlines who have not been doing these dodgy practices, whose owners are not billionaires, who aren't sitting there saying, oh, please bail me out. I have no money from my private island or from my private yacht in Greece, whatever it might be. It's very difficult to feel sorry for these people when you see the sorts of ways that they have been, not personally, the individuals, but with the companies, the way they have been behaving. It's been legal, but a lot of companies who were trying to look after their customers better were not doing this. They weren't trying to get their companies down to the bare bones in order to have massive payouts for shareholders. They were more concerned about the safety and security of the company's future, and therefore they have money in the bank to deal with these things.
All right, Jill Starley-Grainger, we've got to move on. Thanks very much indeed. We'll try and get Richard Branson on to answer some of that, but thank you very much